I just want to say this. I know that we've done some work together. We've had some fun, and I know your seed project's taken off. I want to congratulate you on that. I know that you guys are in production and getting ready to go forward on that. That's going to be wonderful. That's actually what got me into Flat Earth. That's the whole Flat Earth thing that happened. I didn't come into Flat Earth because of Rob. First, I came to Flat Earth because we had developed a relationship and working together on seed that I had looked into the Hollow Earth, and then I stumbled across the Nephilim and the giants, and very biblically based, and that's where that's where God had me going. That's where He was leading me, is to get back in the pages and look at it. And this guy came along, and I started looking into even more of the Nephilim research. So I thought, wow. And then once we became friends, and you called me that day and said, "Have you looked into this Flat Earth thing? Have you seen it?" And I said, "Yes, I have seen it." And it was everywhere. It kept popping up back when YouTube would do that. YouTube was actually suggesting to look into it for a while. And so once I did, the story just continues on, and here we are today. So I want to say thank you for doing what you're doing, man, as a brother and as a friend. And I also want to say that I'm looking forward to more of your stuff and more of the research and many more years of research and sharing with us, because I know that it's invaluable for many. So thank you, brother.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, guys. Let me get this up and running here. And, you know, yesterday I was saying if a picture is worth 1,000 words, right, how much more can we say at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second? Look at that. Yesterday, I told you that was part 1 of 2. Today I'm going to continue where I left off yesterday with Testing the Globe, this time examining the preponderance of evidence. I like that word, kind of a cool word. Yesterday, I talked about the philosophical side of this. For Christians who are afraid of looking stupid, I showed you how you already look stupid to the secular world. So what are you worried about, right? Creation ministries, who are you trying to impress? The secular scientific community that already thinks you're stupid, crazy, and don't know anything? I mean, they even say that about you. So what are you worried about? We have no need of trying to impress these people, especially when some of their smartest guys admit to being 96% stupid in the field that they claim to be experts in, and off by 10 to the 120th power. They themselves say that. They express their own extreme stupidity. And besides, anyone who thinks they are an evolved ape that came here from goo to you by way of the zoo out of a rock that was spit out of an exploding dot clearly does not have the intellectual high ground in any discussion we may have. So I say, look, why don't we just let God be true and let the Scripture speak for themselves and take a stand on it? That's where I come from. So thank you. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the physical evidences that at least convinced me, and I'll be the first person to say, look, don't believe me. Don't believe anything. Just, listen, take notes if you want to, but go out and start searching for yourself to see whether these things be true. One of the first things you're going to have to do is take the red pill. How many of you know what that means? Right? You're going to need to take the red pill first. If you're still sucking on the blue pill, you're not going to get anything. And part of sucking on the blue pill is an undying faith in NASA and science that I believe, biblically speaking, is falsely so called. We need to realize that NASA and all other space agencies are simply full of crap. And when you start looking into various things like JFK, 9/11, moon landings, things like that, the moon landing is a big one. If you still believe we actually went to the moon, you need to do some research. You can start with these videos right here. Bart Sabell's got some good ones. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Astronauts Gone Wild. There's Operation Avalanche is it's a movie made to sort of explain how it might have happened. How were they able to fool everybody? I appreciate a line in that movie when they realized they weren't going to make it to the moon, and they're like, well, we're going to have to fake it. And they're like, well, how are we going to convince everybody? And one of the characters says, we don't need to convince everybody. We need to convince Walter Cronkite. Because everybody loves and trusts him. So if he's convinced, then everybody else will become convinced. I thought that was a brilliant line. Check out the website aulis.com, A-U-L-I-S. Great information there, PhD level people doing lots of research, analyzing all the photographs and whatnot. We did not go to the moon. And once you realize we didn't go to the moon, you have to realize this picture is not real. This is the most significant sphere of influence, pardon the pun intended, that has ever existed, in my opinion. That picture is not real if we didn't go to the moon. And this was one of the first people that got me to think that way. Matt Boylan, what if he's right? I don't know if you've seen some of his routine. Is it real or is it painting? Just to kind of put some things into perspective in that regard. Everything you see on the screen there are paintings. They're all paintings. Those are not photographs of wine bottles and glasses at the top. On the bottom, those are not sculptures. Those are paintings of sculptures done by a friend of mine. Pretty amazing, huh? Now, looking at those pictures right there, which do you think is harder to paint? That might put a few things in perspective, huh? Well, they're pretty much coming right out and telling us that a lot of the stuff we're seeing is space art.
I'm a visualization scientist. I basically try to come up with ways of explaining complex science stories through the visuals and developing artwork and illustrations that actually can help explain the science story to people.
For decades, popular culture and shows like Star Trek inspired a generation of scientists by envisioning what space might look like. But wait, what does space actually look like? Heart nebulas, celestial collisions, a bird's eye view of the Milky Way, astronomers are charting the outer reaches of the cosmos and bringing back jaw-dropping images from telescopes like Hubble and its infrared cousin Spitzer. If you look down at the bottom of that Milky Way image, you'll see these two words: artist concept. This sweeping image of the Orion Nebula actually looks like this. And the TRAPPIST-1 star system, the latest discovery of 7 potentially habitable exoplanets that made national headlines, it's really only a box of gray and white pixels. You see, space art is part of NASA, and it has been since before we went to the moon.
It sure has. A lot of space art going on. Stumbled across something recently that caught my attention. How many of you have heard of the comic book, The Watchmen? You hear that? Yeah, that came out in 1986. It was actually created by an occultist named Alan Moore. And in that comic book, he has a character, Dr. Manhattan, living on has a Mars base, living in a crater that looks like a smiley face. And what do you know, 13 years later, NASA puts out a picture of a crater on Mars with a smiley face on it. Probably just a coincidence. Oh, and for Halloween, the sun just happens to look like a jack-o'-lantern. And, oh yeah, this one just came out here. NASA Hubble telescope sees creepy space face for Halloween. Boo! NASA and ESA's space telescope looked out into the cosmos and found 2 glowing eyes staring back just in time for Halloween. Wow, imagine that. When you start looking into all this stuff and you start seeing some of the evidences that people are putting forward for the globe, it's like, really? Seriously? This is your evidence?
The Earth is round, and here's the proof. Remember Felix Baumgartner? He jumped from the edge of space a few years back to perform the highest parachute jump ever. Well, that was on a live feed in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and you can clearly see the Earth's curvature. So yes, there is tons of proof that Earth is a sphere.
Hear the condescending attitude? That was on a live feed in front of hundreds of thousands of people. So, yes, there's tons of proof. Okay, the exact same curvature was seen at 5 feet when Felix touched the ground as it was when he was up at high altitude. And yet you can't figure that out. And just recently, I had a knockdown, drag-out fight on Facebook with people trying to convince me that the lower picture there was legitimate from the ISS. Right? I'm like, okay, that shows the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. Now, there's a model up at the top there that shows the actual scale of those locations, right? And yet, on the bottom, that's taking up the entire what they would consider the northern hemisphere of their globe. And they're telling me that's a legitimate picture. I'm like, do you have any critical thinking skills in that noodle of yours at all? Clearly, there's something going on there. They're using fisheye lenses. And what I found as I started looking through a lot of the NASA footage and stuff is they've been using fisheye lenses right from the beginning.
I want to talk about the Gemini 4 spacewalk, June 1965. First of all, I want you to know they've been using fisheye lenses right from the beginning. And here's a proof of it right here from footage supposedly from Gemini 4. Look at, watch. Ooh, going flat. Oh, they cut away. Let's look at it again, though, since they cut away, flat, bulging out to being convex. Look at that globe. Wait. Oh, here it goes, going flat. Anyway, some very interesting things about this footage.
Stood up in the seat and got ready to go, and we cleared him to go, and then he took and pushed off from the seat.
Now notice how fast the Earth is moving below them. And look at the way this is shot. He's all herky-jerky, but the Earth below is moving nice and smooth.
Ed White is flying at 17,000 miles per hour, 200 miles above the Earth.
Okay, I'm out.
Okay, they said they're about 200 miles above the Earth and moving at 17,000 miles per hour, okay? Keep that in mind.
If the lifeline fails, you'll literally be lost in space.
Oh, no.
Today, those pictures are classic.
Yeah, they're classic, all right. Okay, now, when I first saw people doing commentary on this, when he turns his head like that, they're saying, see, that's proof, that this is not right. Then I found this footage right here. So apparently, they can turn their heads, so I guess that's been debunked. But compare the stop-motion animation of King Kong, the original King Kong movie, with this footage of Gemini 4. The background's moving nice and smooth, but in the foreground, it's very herky-jerky, very much like the old stop-motion stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to say that looks fraudulent to me. Now, the International Space Station is also supposedly at about 254 miles high and moves at the same speed. Now, check this out.
This is the cupola. It sticks down below the space station. And a lot of folks, I play this game with myself about where we're flying over the Earth.
Uh-oh. Somebody forgot to speed up the animation. This is the day the Earth stood still, ladies and gentlemen. Compare again the Gemini space footage. Both are supposedly at about 200 miles high and moving at 17,000 plus miles per hour. So somebody's lying here, folks. Either the Gemini footage is fraudulent or the ISS footage is fraudulent. You got to recognize that somebody's lying to you here. Look how fast the Earth is moving in the Gemini, and look how the Earth's not moving on the ISS. And just by way of closing, more proof that they're using a fisheye lens. This is from the same Gemini 4 documentary. Look at that. Concave. Oh, no, it's going flat. Oh, no, convex. Oh, wait a minute. No. The Earth's concave. No, it's going flat. Oh, no, it's convex. Whoop, concave. Whoop, flat. Oh, nope.
During re-entry, the USS Wasp launched 13 search and recovery aircraft.
13.
Gemini 4 splashed down at 12:13 Eastern Standard Time.
12:13.
June 7th, 1965.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, I did find the footage of them turning their head inside the helmet, but I still think there'd be major problems with that if they were in a vacuum environment and stuff like that. What kind of seal would they have to be able to turn? I think the whole thing's fraudulent. I think, I'm saying you got to recognize that either Gemini is a fraud or the ISS is a fraud. I think they're both a fraud, frankly. But we'll go on. Let's look at terrestrial-based observations, part 5. When I first got into this, people, of course, immediately, the knee-jerk response is, you're an idiot, you're a moron. What the heck, man? If you've ever been to the beach, you don't see the curve? Sorry, I have to do that every now and then. It's cathartic for me, because that's what I hear in my head now. Every time people start saying stuff like that. Anybody else relate to that? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, they're telling me, okay, if you've ever been to the beach, you've seen the curve. So I start going to beaches, start taking lots of pictures, start bringing them into Photoshop, put a parallel line over it. No, it's flat. So that I'm in Malibu, and I go climb the top of a high mountain in Malibu looking out there. That's about 100 miles across right there. Took a picture of it, again, straight. Went down from Malibu to meet a friend. It's a writer helping me with my seed project. And he grew up in Ventura, in the Ventura Beach area, and he was a lifeguard growing up. And he tells me a story about looking out and seeing the Anacapa Arch. The arch itself is about 40 feet high, and the inside of the arch, from the water to the inside of the arch, is about 25 feet. It's about, from where he was, he said it was 20 miles away. And he said he could see the thing. So that's what got him thinking. He saw me posting stuff on Facebook and stuff, people seeing stuff they're not supposed to see, and he's like, wait a minute, I've seen the Anacapa Arch, and that's 20 miles away. So he went to a friend of his at a university that teaches math, and he said, okay, we're on a globe approximately 25,000 miles in circumference, right? Yeah, okay, what's the math? Yeah, it averages out to about 8 inches per mile squared. Okay, cool. So if we're looking out at an object 20 miles away that's 40 feet high, should we be able to see it? And he did the math up on the board, taking into account observer height and all that kind of stuff. No, shouldn't be able to see it. You know, so you're saying we should not be able, no, impossible, should not be able to see it. He said, well, the problem is, dude, we've all seen it. And the guy's like, what do you mean? He's like, the Anacapa Arch. All of a sudden, you're hearing the Flintstone sound effect, you know, when Fred, something happens to him, he's like, the math professor's looking at the board, you know, looking at his own math, something's up there, I don't know. Started having a lot of those types of experiences, both myself and with others. Met a guy at a conference, he came up to me, he was a professional surveyor, and he says, I gotta show you something, dude. And he shows me his surveyor book, it's first order level book, and under the formula for figuring out curvature and refraction at the top there, it says, rules for applying curvature and refraction when trig leveling. Subtract curvature and refraction on the back sight, add curvature and refraction on the foresight. What? You know? So then I have people say, well, if you've ever flown in an airplane, you see the curve. I'm in airplanes all the time. I'm traveling all over the world doing conferences and all kinds of stuff. So I start taking pictures out of the airplane. Every altitude that I've been at, take pictures of it, bring it into Photoshop, put a line on it, flat. I'm going, well, and then again, you know, I'm searching online and looking for, there's got to be some kind of proof out there for the globe that I can latch onto, right? So you find all these videos like, top 10 proofs why we know the Earth's a globe, and they're coming up with stuff like this.
Number 3, the horizon. Ships on the ocean or tall Chicago buildings viewed over Lake Michigan disappear bottom first. And you can see the sunset twice if you watch it lying down and then quickly stand up. The simple fact is, if the Earth were flat, there wouldn't be a horizon beyond which things could disappear. So from across Lake Michigan, you'd be able to see all of Chicago, as well as the Rocky Mountains.
If the Earth were truly flat, there would be really hardly any limit. You'd be able to stand at the top of the Empire State Building and look towards Chicago, a mere 1,000 miles away, and see the lights of Chicago at night.
Really, dude? Scientists, you notice. That's a scientist there. One of the things, the criticism I hear about this conference and stuff is, well, there's not a scientist among them, no PhDs. Look, I consider that an advantage, frankly. Because the stuff I hear from PhDs is not impressive to me. You know, here's this guy saying he's claiming to be a scientist and saying I should be able to see Chicago from New York. You know, there's this crazy thing in between us called the atmosphere. Look it up, dude. Wow. As for an example of why ships disappear hull first and why you miss the lower parts of buildings, come see me at my table back there. I've got a little show and tell for you to show you how it works. And it came as a result of this guy right here. This picture, and of course you saw this in Jake's trailer there earlier. This picture came out right in the beginning of our whole sort of awakening in 2015. Joshua Nowicki snaps a picture of Chicago skyline from the other side of Lake Michigan, sends it into the ABC News affiliate. Weatherman does this whole thing about saying, we should not be able to see it. You know, the only way you'd be able to see this is like higher up out in space looking down. He says, so what you're seeing here is a mirage. That poor guy had no idea how famous he was about to become. He's just a weatherman, just doing his thing. Next thing you know, flat earthers are all over the poor guy. Now, of course, when I first saw that, I'm like, mirages are wavy, distorted, upside down. That's not a mirage. And Rick said the same thing. And then Rick told me, because he lives in that area, Rick Hummer, and he's like, I've seen Chicago my whole life. I'm like, really? People have seen it? He's like, everybody's seen it. So he started driving out there to the location. Hello? Okay. I'll just stand like this for a little bit. Rick starts going there and taking pictures, and then he starts talking to police officers on duty and getting them to like, wait a minute, how can we see Chicago, Like, everybody can see it. So I'm like, Rick, man, we started talking, we need to come up with a way of proving this, And so we're thinking, the best thing to do, in my mind anyway, was to rent a boat, get in the thing and drive out there and shoot it the whole way, on a clear day. Because my thinking was, if it's a mirage, then as we're driving close to the city, it's going to magically disappear, and then the city will roll up over the ball, and there it is, If it's just the city just is there, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in the camera, which is exactly what it did. But we still had to explain why the lower part of the city was missing. Because people, when they saw my video, Rick and I, it was about a little over a year later, we finally went out there and did the test, and I put out this video that really went viral. Rob Skiba proves the Chicago skyline is not a mirage. We learned a lot of things on that trip, like the haze that's at the bottom there, that's obscuring a significant amount of the lower part of the city, and of course, as you get further back, 46 miles or so, it's compounded all the more. But when we finally found it, it took a year to save the money, to get a boat captain willing to do it, and weather conditions and all that stuff, so it took a while to get out there. Meanwhile, the weatherman had been getting so much flack for this whole thing, online. He went to an optics professor at a university, and the optics professor corrected him, said, well, technically it's not really a mirage, it's more like looming, which I guess is part of that whole category of atmospheric conditions and whatnot, distortions and what have you. So he starts to explain it. Now, I was very thankful that he did that, because that was almost exactly a year to the day that he got the photograph that they did the news report, and right about that same time is when we were doing the trip. Now, when we did the trip, people were like, aha, Skiba proved it's a globe. See, you're still missing the lower part of the city. So, ipso facto, therefore, it has to be a globe. And so, at the time we did the trip, on one hand, we felt like we had a victory. On the other hand, we felt like, no, not really, because it's inconclusive. We're still missing the lower part of the city, so what's going on? Well, here's a clip from the talk that the weatherman had with the optics professor, and then some of the conclusions I came to as a result of it.
So is all this under mirage, and then looming is under mirage, or what are the semantics of looming versus mirage?
Okay, well, that's all. I guess that's all in the details of the terminology. And from what I understand, technically, I think mirage has to have an inverted image. Whereas there are other atmospheric effects such as looming or towering that are purely displacement, and you don't necessarily have to have an inverted image in order for refractive effects to occur in the atmosphere.
So they would all fall under the category of atmospheric refraction.
I guess that would be a good thing to say. Yes.
Okay, so again, this is their graphic. According to them, we know the Earth's a ball, so therefore this is the way it's working. Chicago's over here on the left, we got the curve of the Earth here, and the light rays, which would normally be going straight across, have to be bent due to the atmospheric lensing, the density of the atmosphere and whatnot, causing the light to refract downward, basically just conveniently enough over the top of the bulge of the curve so that we can see it on the other side. Now, here's where I would differ with this whole idea. Again, just sort of flipping the board. Let's just say we don't start with any preconceived notions of the Earth as a globe. Let's entertain for a moment the completely absurd notion that water is flat and it always seeks its own level. And we're looking across a flat plane of water, 46 miles across. Check this image out right here. Now, I caught this image shortly after Rick and I returned from our trip across the lake. We grabbed a bite to eat, and then we went out to the beach, and it was still clear out, so we got the camera out and looked 46 miles across the lake to see this right here. This image is extraordinary. Okay, the boat right here, I'm going to guess, is less than a mile away. And I base that because these people walking in front of the camera here are walking across some rocks that sort of jut out and kind of fence in the harbor area. And they are only about a quarter of a mile away from where we were when I shot this. I shot this image from right about here. This is where we were looking across, and this is the area right here where those people were walking. And the boat, as you could tell by the size of the people on the boat, wasn't too much further beyond that. So maybe a half mile to a mile, or at the most, I would say, away. All right, now when I was headed back to Chicago to catch my flight, I snapped this picture of the Willis Tower. And this is, if you go on Google Earth, this is right about the area right here where I believe I was when I took that picture. Looking across, it's only about 0.6 of a mile. So I'm just a little over a half mile away, and look at the size of the tower as compared to the car that was diagonally in front of me. We were looking at the Willis Tower from this direction right here when we were on the other side of the lake. Now, okay, so let me slide the car over and shrink it down to the appropriate scale beside the boat. Do you see something rather interesting here? This building is significantly magnified. The image on the left shows the size and scale of the building next to a car at 0.6 of a mile away. The image on the right shows the same building and the same car with a boat at 46 miles away. The atmosphere really is acting like a lens. What type of lens? A convex lens or a magnifying glass. So I'm going to suggest this is what's happening. The atmosphere is acting like a lens, which magnifies the city, brings it up a little closer, and as it does so, we start to lose a little bit of the bottom of the buildings, and perhaps due to the density in the atmosphere, there's additional refraction that takes place that makes it drop down even more. Huh. Just like we saw. Now this is a still frame from the half-hour video that I did, and the numbers you see there are all based on the numbers that Tony was giving me based on his device. His device said it was 37 nautical miles, which is 42.6 statute miles, but when you plot the same exact location that we were at, the exact distance you get on Google Earth is 46 miles. So you basically add about 4 miles to all the numbers that you saw in the half-hour video. But here's where it gets interesting, at least to me. Both of these pictures were taken with the same camera from the harbor area here. The red line at the top is where we were in the boat. We're just about to depart when I asked Tony to stop, and I got the camera out to shoot Chicago. And the lower red line is where we were on the beach when I took the picture on the bottom there. Now, here's the shot from the beach before I zoomed in. Now I'm zooming in, zooming in, zooming in. And I'm going to stop it right about here. That's about halfway on the zoom, and I believe that's where Rick had the camera set when he took the picture above. Based on the size of the building right here, I'm going to guess that he was about halfway. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue the zoom. And this is zoomed all the way in. The Nikon Coolpix P900 has an 83 power optical zoom, and that little punch in right after that was the digital zoom afterward. It has a digital zoom that goes beyond the 83 power, so gonna guess it's probably the equivalent of about maybe 90 power zoom or so right here. Now let's bring the picture in from the halfway zoom, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring our car back in and slide the picture in from Chicago. And so you got 3 different zooms here. One almost completely zoomed out, one zoomed about halfway on an 83 power optical zoom lens, and the one on the right, of course, all the way zoomed in with a little touch of digital zoom on top of that in the camera. And when looking at these images compared to the one on the left, which is just shot with my iPhone, I got to tell you, it looks like it's being magnified to me, especially when you consider the fact that that building is like 45 miles away from that boat. It's 45 miles away. So, looks like there's some serious magnification going on here. And, you know, some of that could be due to the lens, I'll give you that. But I also know what I could see with my own eyes. Now, understand you may not want to take my word for it, so all I can say is go up there and do it yourself. But based on what I saw with my own eyes, as well as what the quote-unquote experts had to say regarding how the atmosphere can act like a magnifying glass, I'm still going to go with it as being magnified. There is a lot of water in our atmosphere. But I'm thinking If the atmosphere, especially over water, is made up of zillions and zillions of tiny convex drops of water, then collectively perhaps they all combine to make one big convex lens, in which case it would act like a magnifying glass. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look up some websites dealing with the refraction of light. You might see a graphic something like this, showing light bending downward, just like the weatherman guy said. And here's your typical graphic showing how light rays entering some sort of medium, like in this case water, refraction causes the light to bend downward. Now we've all seen pictures of, a pencil or something in a glass of water, and how not only does refraction bend the image downward, it also magnifies it. So this is important now. And let's just go back and hear from the experts once again what's happening with the atmosphere.
The science is the same of that of a lens. Here's a simple example.
So if you're looking at Chicago here, just maybe now you can just see the top of the Sears Tower, and if our simulated temperature inversion moves into place, hopefully now you can see pretty much all of Chicago,
see all the lower buildings,
including what's at ground level.
So the atmosphere really is acting like a lens.
Yes.
Again, based on that imagery that I saw looking 46 miles across versus 0.6 miles across, I really do believe that, just like the experts said, the globalist guys, these are people who believe in the globe now, they are the ones that said, hey, the atmosphere really is acting like a lens, and they put a lens in front of the camera to show how it works. So I'm just doing what they're doing. Using the sheet right here, set the city up, a little cutout of the city, and now I've got the big magnifying glass sheet. Bring the camera right up to the lens. See, that's the normal view of the city. Now let's back up again.
The science is the same of that of a lens. Here's a simple example.
So if you're looking at Chicago here,
the atmosphere really is acting like a lens.
Yes.
Atmosphere really is acting like a lens, and this is how much of the city is missing due to the lensing effect, the magnification of the atmosphere. So thinking about all this and thinking about what I had just shown you regarding atmospheric lensing, magnification, refraction, all that with regard to cities and objects at a distance on the land, I got to thinking, I wonder how this would work with the sun and moon. So this is what I came up with. I've got my magnifying sheet frame, and I created a little stand to paste the sun on it and keep it the same height over the flat surface of a table. So the sun is always going to be parallel with the surface. And check this out. All right, here's the first test of a sun moving over a flat surface. And with no atmospheric magnification, it does what we might expect it would. It gets smaller as it goes away from us. All right, now let's see what happens when we add in our atmospheric magnification. Again, water and refraction. Water causes magnification and refraction, right? So let's bring the sun back. Oh, check this out. Refraction bends the light downward. It made the sun set on a parallel surface. As it was moving parallel, the same height, the whole way over a flat surface, the refraction caused the sun to set. Not only that, well, let's bring in the beginning of that little test, and we see that it maintained pretty much the same size too. And of course that's because as it's moving away, the magnification is still taking place, and so even though the sun's further away than it was in the beginning of the test, the magnification basically preserved the same size, and the refraction made it set. Of course, again, depending on how much moisture is in the air, we could see that the sun doesn't appear to change in size at all as it goes down. We could see sometimes perhaps that it looks like it's getting bigger when it goes down. You ever see like a really big sunset or moonrise, moonset, where one of them looks really large on the horizon? Well, that could be because there's lots of moisture in the air causing that effect. Or when there's less moisture in the air, obviously you won't have as much magnification taking place, and so it looks smaller as it goes away. So it's all relative to the amount of moisture that's in the air. Now, I'm just going to put forward a crazy idea for you to think about. And that is, if Rob Skiba could figure this out, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I think it's quite possible that the creator of the cosmos could have figured out the same thing and engineered our beautiful sunsets, thanks to all of that water he placed in our atmosphere. Just something to think about.
Thank you. Thank you. When I figured that out, and I'm looking at $10 worth of arts and crafts sitting on my table, I'm going, wow, God, is it really that simple? Apparently it is. And if you guys like to see a demonstration of that, I have that my table out back. Now, if you're going to get into this research, you're going to have to buy yourself, at a minimum, the Nikon Coolpix P900. They got the 1000 out now. But at the time, we were buying them up all over the place. I went to Nebraska Furniture Mart right around the corner over here, and I was trying to see if they had another one, and the salesman's like, "Nah, we can't keep them on the shelves. These things are like all over the country. They're selling out everywhere." I said, "Yeah, I know who's buying them all." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Well, do you know what cognitive dissonance is?" And he says, "No." So I explained it to him, and I said, "Having said that, now would you like me to tell you who's buying them all?" He goes, "Sure." I guess flat earthers are buying them all up. He's like, "Flat earthers?" I'm like, "Remember cognitive dissonance?" Yeah, people are buying this thing up. This is a shot I took. I went to visit my family. They have a winter home in Florida, and we went out to eat at a restaurant near the ocean. And there were ships going out, fishing boats going out to go fishing, and they're about 15 feet high, the ships, and I'm watching them go out, and I was asking the guy, where do they start dropping their nets and whatnot? And it's all about the 4-mile mark. See the markers, and there were like mile markers going all the way out, so you could actually track where the ships were. And then on Google Earth, I looked it up, and sure enough, it was about 4 miles out when they went out there. And I watched the show. I got the camera way down low and watched it go all the way out, and you're supposed to be missing about 10 feet worth of the ship. I didn't see 10 feet of the ship missing. I just saw the thing going out and start getting wavy, and as the distortion from the atmosphere was taken over. It was kind of funny. My dad was there. He wasn't really buying into any of this stuff either. But I said, "Hey, Dad," we went through the curvature math and went through all that and observer height and whatnot. And I said, so much of the ship should be missing, right? Yeah. So I said, "Take a look at this." So he comes over, he bends down, looks in the viewfinder, looks at me, looks back in the viewfinder. I walked away, and I know what he's thinking. He's like, "I'm 75 years old. I don't have time for this crap," But there it was, right there, And I joke about it. The Nikon Coolpix P900 should put out a commercial, bringing ships back over the curve since 2015. They probably saw a whole lot, and all the more so with the globe killer, the Nikon P1000. The next video I'm going to show you, I saw that meme online. I was like, that's just awesome. Taboo Conspiracy, who's here, I'm looking forward to meeting you. I don't know if you're in the room, but I'm looking forward to meeting you. I haven't met you yet in person. Did a video I'm going to show here, and when he was talking about some footage shot by another YouTuber named Tolan Media 1. Check this out.
We're going to begin with coordinates of Tolan Media 1's camera. Here was his location. His camera was at an observation height of roughly 150 feet. You can see the same on Google Earth. This ruler line indicates the path from the camera in Malibu to Catalina Island. From the photographer's point of view, he was observing the utmost left part of the island, which would be the actual southeast corner of Catalina Island. As you can see, the distance to the far left of the island from his point of view was roughly 53.3 miles away. Plug in the numbers in a Earth curvature calculator and you get a target hidden height of 978 feet based on official dimensions of the alleged ball. However, this little step formation only has an approximate elevation of 200 feet. According to the official dimensions of the globe,
This area of Catalina Island should be well hidden by a target hidden height of 978 feet with more than 700 feet to spare. In addition, these far distant boats that are maybe 40 miles away should likewise not be visible. I created a pathway tour on Google Earth so you can see that I'm not trying to trick you. The observations from J. Tolan Media 1's video and Google Earth match almost perfectly. And just to reiterate, this little formation should be hidden more than 700 feet below the horizon. This ferry and its escort should not be visible in any manner. It is time to accept the fact that there is a flat Earth optical phenomenon that is real, observable, and repeatable.
Beyond Horizons, home of the current distance sight world record. Current world record of distant landscape photography. These are the two mountain ranges right here, I believe. We see a silhouette of this place, blah, 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 4102 meters in the middle left of the image. From this other mountain, 2820 meters at 440 kilometers before the sunrise. Okay, so since this is all in meters, let me convert this to feet. 4102, that's 13,458 was the elevation for the distant mountain range. And from this other place right here, which is at 2820, and just to confirm, yep, 9251 and change, so 9252, let's just say, round it up. That's the altitude of the photographer. So we go to, let's just go ahead and copy that. Go to the Earth Curve Calculator here, everybody likes to use. And let's say that's the height of the observer, 9251.969. And the distance at 440 kilometers away. Let's do this as kilometers and miles. 273.403. 273.403. So, what is supposed to be hidden according to this? The horizon's at 117.79969 miles away, according to this. If you're here, this is at that altitude, your horizon is going to be at 117.8 miles away, and the target over here should be 16,140.1805. So we'll use a little calculator here and see what the difference is. 16,140.1805. Subtract the height of the mountain, which was again 13,458.005. So if I'm understanding this correctly, then the top of that mountain range should be about a half mile below the ability of the observer to see it. Now, of course, my detractors are likely going to say that,
No, the reason he's seeing it is because light's bending up over the curvature because of gravity, and what he's really seeing is a mirage,
and all kinds of other ridiculous nonsense like that. But I don't know if you can get a world record for taking a picture of a atmospheric distortion of a mirage. Seems to me you only get a record for taking pictures of something that's actually there. Got the details right here. Apparently this is where the photographer was, and this is the mountain range that he was taking a picture of, and the mountains were apparently all identified here, with the world record being 443 kilometers away. But the math says that's not possible on a globe.
This new surface-to-surface photograph was taken at a record long distance of 326 miles or 529 kilometers. The previous record, surface-to-surface photograph shown on the Beyond Horizons website, was 443 kilometers or 275 miles. The new photograph we are going to look at today was from 326 miles or 51 miles further. Here is a Google map of where the photograph was taken. What makes this even more amazing is the fact that the target island location was only a height of 85 feet. The photograph was taken on top of this peak at an elevation of 3,212 feet or 979 meters. Here is the target location. It is an island off of Corsica with an elevation of 85 feet. you can add another 40 feet for the lighthouse. Here is the record-breaking photograph. You can see the little white lighthouse on top. The viewing direction also lines up with the photographer and the city in front, but you can watch the original video to see how everything lines up. According to the globe model, the target hidden height at an observation height of 3,212 feet and a distance of 326 miles is, and are you ready for this, 43,848 feet. The top of the lighthouse would have been only 125 feet above the water, and you can see it in the photograph 326 miles away. That is just impossible under the globe model. Like so many other observations, that ocean is flat. Ergo, the Earth must also be flat. Thank you, Nouvelle Géographie Planetaire, for sharing this amazing flat Earth proof. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Now, of course, the detractors say that's just a white pixel smudge on the camera or whatever. They don't want to buy it, and yet they'll buy the white pixel dot on the moon when they say, see, a probe went by and captured the moon lander, right? Have you seen those pictures? That's proof, see? They took, somebody else in another country took a picture of it, so they'll believe that white pixel, but they won't believe this one. Funny. Speaking about the moon, a friend of mine told me about a software you can get on your phone called Theodolite. It's about $6 or $9, something like that. Surveyors use it. It's a really great tool for calculating angles and distances and whatnot. And triangulation, if you know the distance between two locations and you're looking at a third, if you know the distance between these two and you take an angle on the third, you can figure out how far away it is. So they thought, wonder if we try that on the moon. And so my friend lived in Washington State, and his brother, I believe, lived in Denver. And at the same time, they had their phone. They're talking to each other. Ready? Let's both go out at the same time on the count of 3. We'll both take our Theodolite app, and we'll take a picture, put the moon in the crosshairs, and let's see what happens. So they both did it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, click, bloop. And they both took a picture of the moon at the same time, brought all the information into calculator.net, and calculated it out, and it came out the moon was less than 300 miles away. So they're like, what? So they went, he had another friend that lived in Houston. He tried it again, got the same results. I mean, here we go with another situation. So what? Again, this is something any of you could do right now. You could go ahead in the App Store, go download it, and wait for a day, get somebody that you know the distance between your house and their house, and go do triangulation on the moon, see what happens. Speaking of that, the moon, I'm like, this is actually one of the proofs that people use. The Earth has to be a ball, because we know that people in the so-called southern hemisphere see the moon upside down compared to us. Proof. Like, really, dude, do you have any critical thinking skills at all? Same thing. Orion looks up, this way here in the northern hemisphere, and it looks the other way in the southern hemisphere. Ooh, wow. That's amazing. Critical thinking skills. Kind of cool. Okay, but wait, I thought we've known the Earth was a globe since Pythagoras, right? Well, it's interesting that when we started sending men high up into the sky, Auguste Piccard was the first to get up into the stratosphere. I think it was 54,000 feet or something like that. I remember what it was. Anyway, he looked out and he described the Earth as a flat disk with an upturned edge when he looked out. This is, I believe, in the 1930s. And then a couple of years later, the Russians got up to, I believe it was 62,000 feet. And they looked out, same thing. Looking down, they tried in vain to detect any curvature of the Earth's horizon. Both of these were reported in the magazine Popular Science. So, okay, this is in the 1930s now, and you can go a little forward into the 40s and start looking through publications, government publications and whatnot, and you start finding some interesting stuff like this.
We go forward about a decade to the 1940s, 1948. This is an official CIA, look up here, CIA.gov, okay, CIA declassified document from the Russians. I'm going to pull it up here in Adobe Acrobat. It's a little easier because I've already highlighted some stuff here, same document. All right, so the subject is Earth measurements, 1948, Moscow, Russia. Outer gravitational field and shape of the physical surface of the Earth. They're trying to figure out the shape of the Earth? Wait a minute. I thought we knew the shape of the Earth since Pythagoras and Eratosthenes, right? Well, apparently the Russians didn't get the memo. A study is made of the coordinates necessary for the solvability and uniqueness of solution of an integral equation by the aid of which the outer gravitational field and the shape of the physical surface of the Earth may be determined. So we go through this document a little bit here. It says the methods of studying the shape of the Earth. So this is what their goal is here. They're outlining some of that. The shape of the physical surface of the Earth can be determined with sufficient reliability on the basis only of data obtained from exact measurements. Well, that goes without saying, I suppose. And let's keep going down here. Let's see. We can regard the potential of the real Earth, by this equation here apparently, as known correct to an additive constant at all points of the physical surface of the Earth and only on the surface, whereas it is not determinable at all other points of space without knowledge of the shape of the Earth. So they're still trying to figure out the shape of the Earth here. But since the shape of the Earth is not known, the shape of the Earth is not known, 1948, the true coordinates of these points, B, L, and H, are unknown to us. So the Russians are having trouble figuring out the shape of the Earth in 1948. Let's look at another document here. Another declassified CIA document up here, right? They're checking out the firmament in this one. Let's go back to Acrobat. 1953 now. Geophysics light scattering, USSR. Trying to figure out how does light work in the atmosphere here. So we get down to page 19 here. It says dissertations defended in the Scientific Council of the Institute of Physics of the Earth, Institute of Physics of the Atmosphere, and Institute of Applied Geophysics, USSR, 1957. March 1957. Looks like March 23, 1957, apparently. The dissertation represents the result of many years of study of the clear daytime sky. The observations were carried out in 12 locations at various altitudes above the sea, various climatic, meteorological, and synoptic conditions. The observations were carried out mainly during high transparency of the atmosphere in the visual range of the spectrum in the absence of a snow cover. In the investigations, 2 instruments designed by V.G. Fezenkov were used. One of these was a visual photometer of the daytime sky intended for measuring the brightness of the firmament. Interesting. Trying to figure out the brightness of the firmament. Again, 1957. The dissertation contains a certain formula of the brightness of the sky, taking into consideration only the brightness of the first order, and derived, get this now, on the assumption of a flat Earth, and giving some conclusions derived on the basis of this formula. So the Russians are trying to check out the firmament based on assumptions of a flat Earth in 1957? Very interesting, huh?
And there's a whole lot more I didn't have time to show here. NASA governments and stuff, calculating all kinds of stuff based on a non-rotating flat Earth. You need to look into Admiral Byrd. He's an interesting character. Antarctica and Project Fishbowl. An American naval officer and explorer, he was the recipient of the Medal of Honor, the highest honor for valor given by the United States, and was a pioneering American aviator, polar explorer, and organizer of polar logistics. Other awards include the Navy Cross, 2 Navy Distinguished Service Medals, Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Legion of Merit citations, and Congressional Gold Medal. So, I mean, he's quite the character. Admiral Byrd, first he goes to the North Pole and claims to have found an entrance to inner Earth, hence hollow Earth theory. This is in 1926. After World War II, the nations, especially Germany, Russia, and the United States, become obsessed with Antarctica. From 1946 to 1947, Admiral Byrd leads Operation High Jump, and you just have to Google the coastline of Antarctica and you know why they called it that. 1955 to 1956, Admiral Byrd leads Operation Deep Freeze, and almost immediately after that, the nations formed the Antarctic Treaty. The United States and Russia starts launching nukes into the sky, and NASA and DARPA are formed. And in the United States, we called our part of the bombing of the sky Operation Fishbowl. Yeah. Things got very interesting after Operation Deep Freeze. So I'll just summarize some of that in this next video here.
So let's just do a quick recap here. 1, everyone becomes obsessed with Antarctica in the late 40s and late 50s. 2, everyone leaves Antarctica to draft up a treaty which would prohibit anyone from going there except under the express strict guidelines of the treaty. 3, the United States creates NASA and DARPA, you know, that organization which creates black budget projects for the military and other agencies and other groups. 4, the United States and Russia start blowing up the sky. 5, the United States and Russia become obsessed with what's above us in space. 6, the United States and Russia become obsessed with what's beneath us.
Several decades ago, two countries, America and Russia, raced to drill the deepest hole into the Earth with the goal of discovering what was at its core. Both projects were massive undertakings, and the world was fixated on what mysteries they'd find beneath the surface. Russia's efforts resulted in something called the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and when you see it, you might have to pick your jaw off the floor. Both countries drilled boreholes deep into the ground until they couldn't go any further. They used enormous metal contraptions that were designed to break through even the toughest material. The world watched in awe as the Americans kicked off the race. The enormous drills were fired up, and everyone hoped the project would go according to plan. What kind of mysteries would the drillers find, if any? The United States called the endeavor Project Mohole, and they began their drilling off the Pacific coast of Mexico in 1961. This would be a massive effort with global interests, and there was a lot riding on the team's work. Unfortunately, soon after the project began, it was abandoned due to lack of funding.
Lack of funding because they decided to put all their funding into going to Antarctica looking for moon rocks and faking the whole world with the moon landings.
Almost a decade later, the Russians had organized their own drilling team and began their quest to reach the center of the Earth. On May 24th, 1970, they set their sights on the Kola Peninsula. The Russians called their endeavor the Kola Super Deep Borehole. The end goal of the drilling project was to reach a depth of 49,000 feet into the Earth's crust. The race to the center of the Earth was an exciting and intriguing time for the world. In the end, the goal was never reached, but at least the scientific community benefited from the efforts. Though defunct, this phenomenal structure still stands as a reminder of one project that had the world on the edge of its seat.
Okay, so they didn't get to 49,000. They only got to something like, I think he said 40,200 or something like that, which is less than 8 miles.
Even the deepest drilled hole is still some 3,955 miles short of the center of the Earth. Barely a pinprick on the surface of our planet.
So we have all these pictures in the textbook about the center of the Earth and what the core of the Earth and everything else looks like. And they're going to say, all right, it's all fiction about the inner Earth and hollow Earth, all that stuff, when they have never even gone deeper than 8 miles. It's unbelievable. We have been lied to with artwork, pictures, paintings, drawings, CGI. Everything about our Earth and everything about space, artwork. And oh, by the way, you know, okay, we're in a race, right? And we supposedly beat Russia in the space race, whatever that means. You know, we did something more than or faster or whatever. Who cares? They just gave up? Really? They just gave up? I quit. I'm going home. No, they didn't give up. They sent dozens of missions to Antarctica while we were doing the Apollo program. Let that sink in. Okay. I got to say, it sure looks to me like they found something in Antarctica which challenged everything we thought we knew, and thus they immediately set out to find how high our enclosed world dome is and how deep the foundation goes. That's exactly what somebody would do if they discovered they were in a cage. They try to figure out how, wait a minute, what are the boundaries? How do I get out of here? That's exactly all of the activities that the United States and Russia in particular engaged in immediately after Operation Deep Freeze all points to exactly that. I don't know how you could come to any other conclusion. So it appears that whatever happened in Antarctica, everybody got kind of maybe nervous or excited or whatever and said, okay, what is the deal? You know, we've looked through telescopes. We've seen our so-called neighbors, Venus and Mars, through telescopes. Our assumption is the solar system is, you know, set up in the Copernican model. And, but yet maybe they found a dome and they started to question all that. So the first thing they do is send out probes to go, wait a minute, what in the world? If we're in a dome, how high does this thing go? So they start launching high altitude nuclear bombs. And if you look at the videos on Operation Fishbowl and Starfish Prime and all those high altitude tests, I mean, it looks like they're hitting something up there. I mean, at least from a conspiratorial tinfoil hat wearing perspective, that's what it looks like. Now, this is what blew my mind. You can read more on all that if you'd like, to get caught up to speed on what's going on there. So I go to Lubbock, and I'm doing this conference out there at Jared Cressman's father's church, Pastor Dan Cressman, and we get to talking about this whole issue of the flat Earth stuff. And he goes, do you know what the name Dominic means? And I said, No. He says, you talk about Operation Fishbowl, but check this out. Look up the name Dominic from the late Latin name Dominicus, meaning of the Lord. Fishbowl was part of Operation Dominic. It looks like they are sending high-altitude nuclear bombs to test the fishbowl of the Lord, i.e., the firmament. Yeah.
If they're trying to avoid a conspiracy, they're not helping with the names, that's for sure. So what's the motivation, all that? Wrapping this up. I've got, looks like 2 minutes left. I'll try to get through this real quick. It doesn't take much research at all to see that they've lied to us about our origins. They've lied to us about our history. They've lied to us about our political system. They've lied to us about JFK, the moon landings, and 9/11. They've lied to us about gravity, fuel, and energy. They've intentionally dumbed us all down. They've lied to us about nutrition and healthcare. They've drugged us all out of our minds for profit. They constantly get us to kill each other in unconstitutional wars. They've convinced us that they are the good guys and must be trusted. They've told us God and the Bible are not true, nor to be trusted for truth. They've made science, falsely so-called, into a god. They've convinced us we are nothing floating on a dust ball in space. They've convinced us aliens are our creators and they're coming back. What is the motivation? Why would they lie to us about this? Well, I think this billboard pretty much sums it up. In science we trust, freedom from religion. Now, I'm against religion myself, personally. I'm not about religion, I'm about a relationship. But what they're saying is freedom from God. And what they did was they created their own religion, and they made themselves into gods, the religious prophets of scientism. Right there. Well, here's my summary of what the motivation might be. Number one, first get people to doubt Yahuwah's word by destroying the very foundation of our Bible, Genesis, especially the creation account. Number two, set up a new paradigm where God is out and science is in. Evolution removes Yahuwah from the equation. Number three, when evolution finally runs its course and becomes utterly bankrupt, introduce the idea of intelligent design, but deny the true designer his due credit and place it rather on ancient aliens. Number four, promote the ancient alien theme as much as possible in all forms of media by perpetuating the concept of Earth as a tiny blue marble orbiting an average sun in an average galaxy among trillions of other galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. With so much potential for life to exist in such a vast expanse, the idea of alien scientists being our creators seems a lot more plausible over time and heavy indoctrination. And number five, the stage is set for our alien creators to return and bestow upon us their miracles, signs, and wonders in order to convince us all the more that all religions are false. Then we put our trust with them. Finally, when Christ does return, we are all convinced that he is the enemy and our united world gathers together to make war with him. I went to the Contact in the Desert conference out in California earlier this year, and this was all the Ancient Aliens crowd. Like, everybody was there. Eric Von Daniken, Georgia with the big hair, and all those guys were all there. Listening to what they're talking about, and I'm saying, my God, if only 2% of what they're saying is true, the world, and especially Christian church, is woefully ill-prepared for what's coming. And that's one of the reasons why I think this whole subject came up when it did. Because we're going to need to know the truth and be able to take a stand on it, because what's coming is going to be very convincing in my opinion. And I think that's exactly what the motivation is. Could be wrong. Look into it for yourself. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it on your favorite social media sites. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned and we'll see you back next time.